Okay, picture this. A full-blown war explodes between two neighboring countries, Pakistan and Afghanistan. But what if I told you there's a third player, a hidden hand, pulling all the strings from the shadows? Let's dig in.
And that is the million-dollar question here, isn't it? Pakistan is pointing the finger squarely at India, accusing them of engineering this entire war and turning their old ally Afghanistan into a proxy. So what's the deal? Are they just trying to shift blame, or is there actually some fire behind all this smoke?
All right, first things first, let's get a handle on what's actually happening on the ground. Because to even begin to understand these accusations, you've got to appreciate the scale of this thing. We're not talking about some minor border skirmish here.
I mean, we're talking about intense, back-and-forth airstrikes. The Taliban, they're claiming they've killed over 130 Pakistani soldiers and taken something like 40 military posts, grabbing all the weapons they can. And of course, Pakistan is hitting back hard. This is a nasty, brutal fight, and it's only getting worse.
And the accusations? Oh, they're not holding back. They are direct. Pakistani officials are literally saying India is fighting a low-intensity war against them, using Afghanistan as a pawn. And get this, it's not just them. There's even an alleged CIA report floating around that claims India is using the Taliban network to take out militants inside Pakistan. Wow.
Okay, so how do we even start to make sense of all this? Well, like any good detective story, the first rule is always the same. You find the motive. Who really benefits from this chaos? And to figure that out, we've got to jump in our time machine because the seeds of this whole mess were planted a long, long time ago. And this brings us right to the heart of it all, the story of how a monster was made. Seriously, to get what's happening today, you have to understand the very deliberate, decades-long strategy Pakistan used, a strategy that created the exact forces now fighting against them.
You know, the bad blood started way back. In 1893, the British just drew a line on a map, the Durand Line, and split the Pashtun people right in two. Afghanistan has never, ever accepted that border. Then, jump to 1947, and Afghanistan is the only nation to vote against Pakistan joining the UN. So yeah, not a great start. But the real game changer? The 1980s. The Soviets invade Afghanistan, and suddenly Pakistan, with a ton of CIA cash, sees this golden opportunity. They decide to build their own friendly forces in Afghanistan, a policy they called strategic depth. So in these, let's call them secret labs on their own soil, Pakistan started cooking up what they saw as 5 key weapons to control Afghanistan and, of course, to counter India. And these weren't just some random militias, no. These were hand-picked assets, trained and funded for a very specific job.
And don't just take my word for it. This wasn't some dark secret whispered in hallways. Just listen to this. It's a jaw-droppingly honest quote from a Pakistani official. They openly said, "We brought them in, we trained them, we armed them, they were our heroes." I mean, you can't get much clearer than that. This was a state-sponsored project, plain and simple.
But here's where the story takes a wild turn. The heroes they created? Well, they had their own ideas. This is the classic definition of blowback, when your perfectly laid plan comes back to bite you. Hard.
And this slide just lays it out so perfectly. Look at the plan versus the reality. The goal? Strategic depth to control Kabul. The reality? They created a Frankenstein's monster right in their own backyard. The goal was to open a new front against India, but what they actually did was lose complete control of the very monster they'd spent years building. A total backfire. And again, you don't have to take it from me. Here it is, straight from the horse's mouth. When a former chief of the ISI, that's their top spy agency, was asked if they'd created a Frankenstein monster with the Pakistani Taliban, he didn't even try to deny it. He just called it blowback. I mean, that's a stunning admission of a massive, catastrophic strategic failure.
And this isn't just theory. The consequences are hitting them hard right now. Pakistan is basically being eaten from the inside out. It's not just the TTP. You've got other groups like the Baloch Liberation Army, and their attacks have quadrupled just since 2020. Think about that, quadrupled. It's creating absolute chaos.
So you see the picture, right? Pakistan is caught in a perfect storm. The economy is in shambles. They're dealing with these raging insurgencies. There are protests everywhere. The country is incredibly weak right now. And that vulnerability, that's what sets the stage for the biggest plot twist in this whole story. Because while Pakistan was busy fighting the monster in its basement, something really unexpected started happening. A quiet, almost unbelievable shift. Two old enemies, India and the Taliban,
started talking.
Just look at the 180-degree turn here. It's unbelievable. When the Taliban stormed back into power in 2021, it was all anti-India, pro-Pakistan. They were calling Pakistan their brother, talking about Kashmir. Now fast forward just a little bit, and suddenly they're heaping praise on India. They're publicly trashing Pakistan's aid, and they're fighting them at the border. So the big question is, what on earth changed?
Well, the answer is actually pretty simple. It's just cold, hard pragmatism. See, when the Taliban took over, the Afghan economy completely tanked. They were desperate for food, for medicine, for cash. Pakistan, with its own economy on life support, just couldn't help. But India? India had the resources, and they stepped up in a big way, sending tons of wheat, millions of vaccines, and a whole lot of money.
And this was India's move. A really smart, pragmatic pivot. They saw the opening that Afghanistan's collapse created. They used aid as a powerful tool. They started quiet, back-channel talks, and step by step, they just systematically broke Pakistan's total control over what happens in Kabul.
Okay, so now it's time to connect the dots. We've got Pakistan's failed strategy, its internal chaos, and this surprising new friendship between India and the Taliban. So how does it all lead back to this war?
All right, let's lay out the case file, detective style. Motive? For India, having its two biggest rivals fighting each other is a massive strategic win. It's a dream scenario. Opportunity? Pakistan is arguably at its weakest point in decades, thanks to its own policies. The means? India's got the economic muscle to step in and offer help where Pakistan can't. And the evidence? Well, it's circumstantial, sure, but it's pretty compelling. Just look at how fast the Taliban flipped.
Now look, is there a smoking gun? A leaked document that says India funded this war? Of course not. That's not how these things work. Covert ops don't leave receipts. But here's what you can't deny. The logic is perfect. The incentives for India and what's actually happening on the ground, they line up perfectly.
And this really gets to a fundamental truth about geopolitics today. Advantage isn't something that just falls into your lap. It has to be designed. It's built by doubling down on your own strengths, like India's booming economy, and brilliantly exploiting your opponent's vulnerabilities, like the mess Pakistan made for itself.
So when you look at the big picture, this isn't just about a war on a border. It's really the final chapter of a 30-year story. It's a masterclass in the difference between smart strategic improvement and, well, creating an uncontrollable monster. One country designed an advantage, and the other designed its own downfall.
And that leaves us with one last big question to think about. In this huge, complex game of geopolitics, are there really such things as permanent enemies and permanent allies? Or is it all just about permanent interests and knowing when to seize a fleeting opportunity?